evening traveler. Pull your chair in a little closer to the iron stove and let the late-night valley breeze settle down outside against the logs. My name is Sheriff Silas, and after spending all these years wearing a silver star on the frontier, I have come to realize that the most unnerving legends men talk about around a campfire are usually manufactured by someone who wants to keep folks looking in the opposite direction. A galloping phantom in the night makes for a fine fireside tale, but it is rarely more than a human being hiding behind a clever trick. Take what happened over at Crimson Gorge just as the summer heat was baking the dry riverbeds into cracked clay and yellow dust. Crimson Gorge was a lonely cattle-shipping stretch where the railway spur met the high trail, making it the primary point where ranchers traded their herds for hard winter cash. For 3 straight months, every time a wealthy cattle buyer rode through the lower canyon after sundown, a lone spectral horseman draped in a flowing black oilskin cloak would swoop down from the red sandstone bluffs, firing a pistol into the air and scattering the horses before vanishing straight through solid rock walls without a trace. The local Livestock Association president, Mr. Henderson, came riding into town one sweltering afternoon, his shirt soaked through with sweat and dust, slamming a fist onto my front counter while demanding I organize an armed militia to hunt down the demon of Crimson Gorge. Henderson swore up and down that the rider left no hoofprints in the dry sand and that bullets passed right through his chest like smoke, proving the canyon was haunted by the vengeful spirit of an outlaw who had died there back in the territorial wars. In my line of work, you never let local superstition dictate the facts of a case. I told Henderson I would pack my saddlebags and ride out to Crimson Gorge myself before we started rounding up posses or burning down old campfires, because truth is a quiet thing that leaves behind its own footprint if you know how to look for it. When I reached the lower canyon, the midday sun was beating down fiercely against the towering red sandstone walls, casting sharp, blinding shadows across the winding trail. The gorge was dead silent save for the dry rattling of sagebrush in the hot wind. I dismounted from my bay gelding and walked the length of the canyon floor where the supposed ghost attacks had taken place, dragging my boots through the powdery red dust. Henderson had claimed there were never any tracks left behind by the phantom horse. As I inspected the base of the eastern sandstone bluff where the riders always claimed the spirit vanished, my eyes caught a faint, unnatural discoloration in the rock face. It wasn't solid stone at all. It was a heavy wooden gate painted meticulously to match the surrounding iron-rich sandstone, cleverly built into a deep natural cleft and curtained with dried brush. I pushed against the disguised timber door, and it swung inward with a dry creak, revealing a dark, man-made cavity carved deep into the heart of the bluff. I struck a wooden match, lit my lantern, and stepped inside the hidden cavern. The interior was cool and dry, smelling faintly of saddle leather, cheap whiskey, and fresh horse manure. Tied to a wooden hitching rail inside was a sleek, pitch-black stallion without a single white marking on its hide, wearing horseshoes shod with strips of heavy felt wrapped tightly around the iron to muffle every sound against the rocky canyon floor. Resting on a wooden crate nearby was a black oilskin cloak, a box of blank theatrical cartridges, and a leather mail satchel overflowing with stolen cattle buyer cash and gold certificates. Someone hadn't summoned a demon from the netherworld. They had built a high-grade highwayman's garage right inside the belly of the canyon. Before I could walk back out to examine the rest of the cave, the heavy timber entrance door scraped sharply behind me, and a tall figure stepped into the dim lantern light blocking the exit. It was young Deputy Miller, the very same eager young fellow Henderson had assigned to help me patrol the Western District, holding a loaded Winchester rifle loosely in his grip. Miller stopped dead in his tracks when he saw me standing beside his hidden stash, the color draining entirely from his face until he looked as ghostly as the legend he had invented. He didn't raise his rifle or try to shoot. He simply let out a long, shuddering sigh, let the barrel of the gun sink toward the dirt, and leaned his shoulder against the rough stone wall in total defeat. Miller invited me to sit with him on an empty wooden crate, while he explained how he had managed to pull off the legend of the Phantom Rider. He confessed that working a low-paying badge in a quiet frontier settlement hadn't matched the grand ambitions he had dreamed up when he first pinned on his star. By wrapping his horse's hooves in thick felt, riding out under the cover of dusk, and using the camouflaged cave entrance to disappear the moment local buyers panicked, he had convinced the entire valley that a supernatural spirit was guarding the gorge. Every time a rich rancher rode through with pockets full of cattle money, Miller would stage his ghostly ambush, frighten the man into dropping his satchel, and slip back into his secret cave before anyone could sound an alarm, returning to town an hour later looking as innocent as a Sunday preacher. We sat in the cool silence of the sandstone cave for a long while as I explained to Miller that trading an honest badge for a coward's loot always leads down a dead-end trail. I gathered up the stolen gold certificates and the black oilskin cloak, loaded them securely onto my saddlebags, and escorted Miller back down the valley trail under the late afternoon sun. We didn't need to drag out a messy, public circus trial in the territorial court, because true justice on the frontier often requires clear accountability, immediate restitution, and a firm application of the law. I turned the disgraced deputy over to the Federal Circuit Marshal when he reached the rail station that evening, while the Livestock Association recovered every single dollar of their stolen capital without a penny lost. The fire in the iron stove is burning low now, casting long, peaceful amber shadows across the rustic wooden floorboards of my office. The valley outside is wrapped in a deep, quiet stillness, and the stars are shining bright and clear over the frontier ridge. You see, partner, people often think that solving mysteries requires chasing ghosts or fighting off demons in the dark, but more often than not it is just about checking the rock walls, following the muffled hoofprints, and refusing to let theatrical illusions cloud your common sense. Until our next case file is opened, keep your ledger clean, your heart steady, and your dealings honest. Good night, partner.